Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome one, welcome all. It's FII 8, and our topic for this session here in this magnificent dome is how is AI affecting and changing healthcare systems? I've got 4 guests. I'll introduce them to you. The clock is already running. If we've got time for questions, we'll take them, but it is a brilliant lineup. Let me tell you, next to me is Zoe Barry. Zoe is a serial entrepreneur and, my spies inform me, an avid race car driver too. I quote her, "I like high risk and high reward." Yeah. Good. She is the founder and CEO of Zingeroo and also the founder of ZappRX. Let me tell you, ZappRX was described as Amazon Prime for $100,000 a year specialty medication. Yep. Okay, so that company raised over $42 million and was acquired by Allscripts in the June of 2019. Congratulations, Zoe. Welcome. Your latest one isn't in healthcare.
No.
We have questions.
Perfect.
Next to you is Irene Hong. Very nice to see you again, Irene, the founding partner of CEC Capital Group. That is an investment bank, China-based, brokering some incredible deals across healthcare, but also TMT and consumer services. Let's just look back. CEC has closed over 400 transactions with a over $400 billion deal value. Good to see you, Irene.
Thank you.
Okay, now we get 2 more entrepreneurs. So we've got a big lineup here. Dr. Rahul, it's very good to see you. Dr. Rahul Singhvi is the co-founder and chief exec of Resilience, based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Another business builder and operator, really. Experience in biotechnology and pharma, a real track record in manufacturing of gene therapy, vaccines, and biological products. Here's what they say about Resilience: your biomanufacturing innovation partner, leading the pursuit of novel medicines by revolutionizing how they're made, funded, and scaled. Welcome, Rahul. Next to you, completing our lineup, is Benjamine Liu. He will need little introduction to attendees of FII here last year. He's the co-founder and CEO of FormationBio. In the words of its recent funder, Andreessen Horowitz, it's an AI-native pharma company focused on drug development, arguably the consequential bottleneck in bringing new medicines to patients. Welcome, Ben. You complete our lineup. Let's give them all a round of applause. Thank you. Now, we like a snappy panel at FII. If we only had 2 minutes today and not half an hour, you have 30 seconds each. How can AI improve healthcare? I'm going to start with you, Irene.
Oh, okay. Well, AI is not a thing in of itself, so I think AI will improve healthcare across every segment, which is from drug discovery, let's say with AlphaFold, to diagnostics, imaging, robotics, to treatment, online, remote, doctor in your pocket, as they described before. So I think across every segment, it's going to have a major impact.
Right,
yeah.
so very expansive indeed. Dr. Rahul, I thought you might say that, Irene, but Dr. Rahul, tell us.
I believe AI is going to democratize sophisticated work, such as drug development, and that in turn is going to increase access and affordability of medicines and make the world more equitable.
Right, so we're going to want to hear about both of those, access and affordability, in this session. Zoe, your thought starter for us.
On efficiency and AI?
How can it improve healthcare?
So for those of you who don't know, my first company I founded in 2012, so well before AI was actually a term. If I were describing ZappRX today, I would say it was using AI to drive workflow optimization and prior authorizations for $100,000 medications. So workflow optimization is my bread and butter. It's all about time savings. Nurses were spending 10 days on average filling out the paper forms in order to get a specialty drug started.
Right.
In that process, we got it down to about 90 seconds. So that was cost savings, time savings for those nurses.
So streamlining.
Streamlining.
Right,
so
the racing driver, the need for speed.
every second counts. We're always fighting for a second.
All right, we're on the grid. All right, Zoe. Ben, get us started.
I think most of the intellectual work that humans and healthcare providers pride themselves today, AI will do better in the near future. And what that will allow is our healthcare providers to focus on what humans uniquely can do. So making sure they spend time with patients, having amazing kind of bedside manner, but a lot of the intellectual work, even not only in healthcare providers, but also scientists, I think we're converging on this chain of thought reasoning that what we pride ourselves in doing today will drastically change.
Good, right. So that is a big reframe. Now, I've got some clarifying questions based on your formidable bios. Question number one, Zoe, why aren't you in healthcare?
Fun fact. While non-competes are not generally allowed for employees, you can actually have a non-compete for a founder. So if you sell a business, it goes to the acquirer can actually ice you out of an industry, which is what happened to me. I had a 3-year non-compete with Allscripts. Because they touch just about every area of healthcare, it was too hard to stay.
All right, so in that case, and of course you've got an amazing background in healthcare, single biggest thing you learn about what is a multi-trillion-dollar industry that you wish you'd known a little bit earlier?
You can get kicked out. You can get forcibly kicked out. As a founder, you think about building your entire career, you can be prohibited from working in it. However, I would say if you're building a company and you look at the entire stack of how are you going to get a really big company to move, everyone starts with the, pie in the sky, let's impact change, outcomes. The reality is talk about money. Money is what drives action.
Right. Money talks, Irene,
Yes.
I'm nodding. Now, I don't want us to have this amazing chat and guests say, yeah, but didn't get what Rahul and Ben were doing. Help us understand how your businesses differ or if they're similar in any way. Thank you.
I'll start with mine. So I run a company called Resilience, and what we are doing is manufacturing of medicines, complex medicines.
Yeah.
And we try to do this using technology so that we can transcend any differences in wages between what we do in the US versus in other countries.
Yes.
And level the playing field. We think technology is the best way to level the playing field. And so we can be globally competitive even though we make those drugs in the US.
Right. Now, because we've got multi-industries here in the Dome, to go on the specifics, therefore, not the discovery itself, but the manufacture.
Exactly. It's the production of the medicines.
All right. Meanwhile, Ben.
Yeah, I think Rahul and I both play on very complementary parts of the pharma value chain. He focuses on manufacturing, which is a big cost center. We focus on applying AI and technology to drug development. One of the ironies is as AI gets more efficient, drug discovery is only creating more drugs that potentially can help patients, but the biggest bottleneck is the cost and time of drug development and clinical trials. Often can be hundreds of millions of dollars across all the phases.
Yeah.
So as a company, we apply AI technology and more efficient operations to drastically reduce the cost and time of drug development and clinical trials. And we buy drugs already discovered, run them through our own kind of drug development engine, and then bring them ultimately to kind of patients faster. And maybe going to this theme, a lot of the ways we're applying AI is actually do a lot of the mundane things. Medical writing, protocol development, biostats. The whole regulatory function in a pharma company oftentimes is synthesizing mountains of guidances from regulatory bodies, putting together an NDA, a drug application to the regulators is a bunch of paperwork, right? LLMs are quite good at that today. So tier one is allowing one person to do 10x more work.
Right.
With then decision support, and in the long run, you can actually build these agents to do things end to end.
Now, Benjamin, we've got questions about trust.
Yeah.
And they're coming in this conversation, but that sets the scene really well. So we want to hear more on that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Irene, what is this really all about? On the one hand, AI driving down costs.
Yeah.
Is it really making companies just more profitable? You are in the deal room. What's going on?
Yeah, I think, of course, we think about costs, but actually I think, because I spend a lot of time in the China region, there's an even bigger driver, which is, I'm going to just kind of give you guys a statistic, which can show you how important this is going to be, is because right now, 1 in 5 in China, a population of 1.4 billion is over 65. By 2030, it's going to be 1 in 4, and by 2040, it's 1 in 3, and by 2050, it's 1 in 2. Okay, so if you really think about 1 in 2 by that time is going to be elderly, trying to think about how you're going to actually service that population and actually provide care, there's just not going to be enough doctors ever to be able to do that. So I think a bigger driver is really thinking about what this impending, and this is across all of Asia, this impending population problem. So I think that it's, if I think about it, AI and monetization is tough, to be frank. And a lot of people have been disappointed in the monetization of it. But I think that's going to be a slow burn.
Okay, let's get that. At this meeting yesterday, Elon Musk predicting 10 billion humanoid robots by 2030.
China is very strong on humanoids at the moment. Like right now, a lot of money is going into humanoids.
All right.
Yeah.
Rahul, you're in the business of changing lives, but how about businesses? What does it really boil down to?
Yeah, so in drug development or in drug manufacturing, it's a sophisticated business. And if we can create an AI that can democratize it. For example, as Ben was saying, if you tell me that I need to make a drug at this price or this cost, I can use an AI that can basically spell out the entire process.
Yeah.
And so anybody who doesn't have the long experience or the education,
Yes.
they can, in their own country, can build that. And so therefore, it is a way to democratize
And
the access.
really change the
It
game.
just levels the playing field.
Come in.
So I will respectfully challenge that point. I don't know if I'll go as far to say I disagree with it. But the world that I lived in, the medications cost, on average, $150,000 per patient per therapy per year. And patients were on combination therapy. In general, they were about $500,000 to $750,000 per patient annually across a combination of drugs. As I was building my company, everyone always said, but why don't you go after the drug pricing? Why don't you try to bring drug pricing down? And here's the reality, particularly for specialty drugs. Yes, it costs $1.7 to bring a drug to market over 10 years. But if you're in a very thin patient population, those drugs are priced based on how expensive the patient is without care. So if you only have 10,000 patients in a category, you need to charge over $100,000 for a drug to make
it's
back
important. It's important to
those
get Ben's
pricing.
take on this. Ben, your company has just announced a partnership with OpenAI and Sanofi. Whether or not they want to hear it, you are the new farmer on the block, aren't you?
Yeah, and I would say one of the biggest opportunities to lower drug prices is to tackle how expensive it is to develop a drug. So typically 1 out of 10 drugs work, starting at the very top of the funnel. Every shot on goal costs a few $100 million. So the reason why it needs to be priced so high is because when a successful drug takes around $2.6 billion on average to develop a drug, if you have a small patient population, you need to charge more, right, to get that ROI back with kind of the margin that
now,
you need.
we should do an after meeting over coffee for anyone who wants to join us. But I want to push on a real challenge here, Zoe. But I'm going to put it straight to you and come back on this, right?
Well, I have a data point to counter that.
Which is to say, Zoe Barry, that all of these developments are in danger of only affecting those who can afford it.
Yeah.
And any dreams that these developments affect the next billion and are delusional. What do you say to that? You're in a B2C market.
Yes, but I just want to answer counter one point first, which is, everyone talks about drug pricing in pharma, and that's so easy to see. A drug is expensive, the pharma makes money. That's not actually how the money flows in healthcare, particularly in the United States. There is, a list, the Fortune 500. Has anyone taken a look at it to see the top 10?
No, noted. No, okay. Point well made.
40% of the top 10 is not a pharmaceutical company. It's an insurance company. Insurance company takes no risk in drug development. They're the ones who are making the money on drug pricing.
And if we had 12 hours, we would draw on that thread. Absolutely, we would. Help make the case or not that this really is about helping us reach literally billions more people, or is it just for the lucky, wealthy few?
Sure. So on that, take the next billion. I'm personally a bit bearish on what is AI going to do for the actual individual patient? Because think of the data gap. In order to have AI be relevant to you, you have to have a laptop or a cell phone. And the people who need technology the most in order to have access and efficiency in healthcare don't have those basic tools. So where is the actual benefit of the next billion going to be? The reality is it's going to be a big company who has data scientists, an army of people, has billions of dollars of cost, and that's where you're going to see.
All right, thank you, Zoe.
Except
I have a different perspective here. I think this is one of the biggest opportunities to democratize what otherwise are specialty knowledge information. Maybe first in our industry, right, if you can lower the cost of developing a drug, understand what drug is going to work with a higher probability of success, you can lower drug prices. Even beyond that, you think about who has access to healthcare providers today. These AI models are getting drastically better, that we're not too far away, if not already here, where your average doctor in your phone with one of these more advanced LLMs, fine-tuned for medicine, will allow someone in a country that historically can't access a physician better than the current status quo. So I'm very bullish. It's not to say there's not going to be systemic inequities depending on kind of policy and regulations and access. But I think the baseline here is a raise all boats opportunity.
All right, all right.
Because all
But I'm gonna bring in Irene.
Yeah.
But I am gonna come to you in a second then about trust, because it's all very well getting the AI to write our medical documents, but right now it's got a massive disclaimer on its front page that says may not be correct. So I think that needs addressing. Irene.
I think Zoe's point of view is very anchored in the U.S. healthcare system,
Yeah.
which is one system and a very important system.
Yes, good
but
point.
China has one single payer,
Yes.
right? I mean, literally almost one single payer. I mean, commercial insurance is very low, but the government is the one that, and they're also the ones that are regulating. And we, to bring you into the next question, we also don't have so much trust issues in terms of patient trust. So, it's a certain...
Forgive me, Irene. I know it's a global audience, and you can be as blunt as you like and diplomatic as you like. Just remind us.
Yep. I'm sorry?
We say we don't have the trust issues, but I don't want to leave it hanging.
No, I mean, China doesn't have, well...
Do you have choice?
Well, no, it's not that. They don't inherently have such a mistrust, actually. They don't have the mistrust. And so it's a system actually where AI can be deployed a lot more easily when you have regulatory support, you have the patient population that doesn't have a lot of the, we're not litigious, right?
Yes.
So, and a lot of the things with litigation and all these other things, we don't have that kind of baggage.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you. Ben, briefly, and then I am going to change gear very swiftly here. You'll like this. Ben, on trust, because it's a very serious point. We can be streamlining all we like, but frankly, if we don't trust the output, why are we even bothering?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important points. And I think a really a great opportunity here is to make sure that when we develop these more advanced AI systems, there's always a human expert in the loop. And I think most of the more judicious companies are deploying this kind of strategy where they have the best human judge to make sure that you're not having a situation where this is fully AI driven until it's ready.
Yeah.
And you kind of see a lot of these kind of situations where an AI radiologist has been for a pretty long time better than the average human radiologist, but you still have these kind of human kind of checks. And I think you need that.
But explain
Sure.
to me, and to us.
Sure.
In a world in which the AI is massively more knowledgeable, we can discuss what that word means, by the way, another day, but massively more knowledgeable than the human expert in the loop. The expertise of the AI vastly outranks that. What's the point of the human?
Yeah, I think, maybe just on the meta theme of trust, I think we need to be very honest about maybe an elephant in the room that a lot of jobs will change and there's going to be a massive dislocation. And for a lot of things, maybe when we open up and, we pride ourselves in a lot of things, being the smartest being in the universe. I think we're going to live in an era where we will no longer be that. Doesn't mean that humanity doesn't have a huge role, right? I think humans can do unique things. But I will say that for a lot of things that, we think that AI can, humans do special, like even science, I would say our domain, AI is getting really good at some of these things.
Yes.
The chain of thought, reasoning models. We're in the first half of the first inning right now. And it's
I
only
like
gonna
it.
Get better.
So it's sort of Churchillian, sort of the end of the beginning, perhaps.
Yes.
Maybe just the beginning of the beginning. So it wouldn't be FII if I didn't challenge us to think big. Let's. I don't want to sound playful, but I think we should dream a little bit. What's possible? It's the sort of yes and question, Dr. Rahul. Lead us off. What do you see could be possible?
So I believe the world is going more and more towards personalized medicine. Like people will take your DNA and they can tell you what medicine to take. This is really going a little bit out there. But for that, you cannot have a one-size-fits-all type of product. And so I believe that this is going to lead to what I call manufacturing pharmacies.
Yes.
The pharmacy is not just going to dispense drug, they'll actually make it right there. That is how I see it.
At home?
It won't be at home, but it'll be close to a hospital, for example. And this first of these will be autologous cell therapies, for example.
Yes.
That's radiotherapies,
Yes.
isotope-based therapies.
Thank you. I'm keen to get some snapshots, but Zoe, come in.
All right, how many people here have actually seen software in the healthcare realm, like an electronic health record? Has anyone seen what Epic looks like or looked at the code? All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Has anyone seen what a PIMS is, a pharmacy information system? Does anyone know the caliber of the code? We're talking like mumps. We're talking about like, if this were a video game, this would be Duck Hunt, right? This is like, we're Tetris, we are so far back. Atari, like, what we're talking about with AI is like so futuristic.
All right,
And so if we were going to say, let's think of something realistic for AI to have an impact in and dream big, I would say, engineers are at risk, right? That's a category. People think about the receptionist who's at risk. I think of the engineers with all the schooling. Why don't they rewrite the actual code that is in these EHR systems? Epic costs $1 billion to implement at a hospital. Yeah. And Judy is a very great example of a female billionaire. But should it cost $1 billion to implement software at a hospital? I don't think that's right.
And we need to think pretty
Old
big.
crappy software.
Irene, we need to think pretty big anyway.
So there's a fun idea about healthcare and wellness. Which is there was a company in China, and it seems like it's a few years back, but imagine that you wake up, you look in a mirror, that mirror reads you, you pee in a toilet, that toilet gives you your diagnostics, and almost everything in your life, rather than actually thinking about sick care, right? Everything in your life can then start to, it's not the whole omics idea. So we're gonna get to, eventually we're gonna get to a pretty, George Jet's, like a sort of a really futuristic way of integrating all of our metrics into daily life, and then literally they can build big data on when you view people. The fundus camera can now look at your eye and can get a lot of disease diagnostics from your eye. So I think we'll get all these diagnostics, and it'll be an incredibly fun.
Really
feature.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the mirror always reads us if we look deeply enough, Irene. But I do think you're a deal maker, and our entrepreneur is nodding at that vision.
I think the idea of being able to get data that is predicting what is going to happen to you, I think is so important. And then being able to have, if you do get sick, to have a very specific medicine given to you.
Those interventions there. But I want a vision from you. Great. But of course, I've got some challenges on all of the above. Let's go.
Sure, I'll kind of talk about pharma because it's the world I live in. I think we're living in probably the most interesting time. And I think with AI or AGI, the pace of scientific discovery and development of new medicines will proliferate. Today, pharma companies are non-Bayesian companies. Just because they ran a one trial and one indication.
Just say that again. Today, pharma companies are not...
They're not Bayesian companies, right? Just because they ran a trial in one indication, the next time they run a trial in the same disease doesn't mean they have a higher probability of success.
Yes.
Because these are 100,000 people companies. Each drug development team is siloed. They're not learning from every other
It's Bayesian,
trial that's
he's
being
not
run.
Bayesian.
Yes.
And so, I think the opportunity with AI is that, every single experiment that's run, right, is synthesized. And we know the next, highest likely probability experiment to run, right? That's really how these neural networks really kind of work, right?
So if
that's
we
really
were, I know I'm getting a bit practical here, Ben, but if we were sitting around at FII 18, and I say, other than your company, who are the biggest players in the world of health? Who are they going to be?
I think any company that is not thinking about integrating AI as first having agents disintermediate a lot of the really human capital intensive work, and then actually having AI run the orgs and being able to capture all the amazing human decisions that are made in an organization and using that to train and your AI, those companies will struggle to really kind of build an enduring business in the long run.
And in terms of the deals, Irene, to be done, I'm being crass about that word, but there are some incredibly eye-catching, to say the least, innovations, and yet industries have shown us that sometimes it's the, my word, boring areas that actually deliver the big bang for the buck.
Yeah, I'm going to combine your question because I almost, when you ask who are going to be the big winners in 18, I don't think we know that they exist right now. Right now, it's still, in practicality, everyone's still having a hard time monetizing. It's not that sexy. Ping On Good Doctor's done 1 billion online consultations. They're quite large. They have quite a big financial. Their financials are very good, but they sell pharma drugs, right?
Yes.
So I think it's going to be it's a process of leveraging the old and transforming into the new. And I think it's going to take time for the monetization and for things to pick up. But I can tell, from this conference that everything is accelerating so fast.
All right.
So I actually don't think that we know who's going to be the winner.
All right, Ben, come in.
Maybe just really quickly, I think the biggest challenge for most big organizations is it's really hard to train the thing that's going to take away your job. And that's maybe the cycle of most of these AI technology. I'll give you just a simple example. Medical writing in our industry is a really big, heavy, important task with really smart PhDs writing a lot of the relevant documents for our industry. You know, it's kind of maybe more of a mundane kind of activity, though we think it's really interesting. But that's something that AI is doing really well. But in order for it to do well, you need your human capital to be comfortable training it. And so I have this view, kind of the tech native companies are going to have a lot easier time than the incumbents that need to convince their team members to implement something that fundamentally some of their team will have a hard time
understood.
embracing.
So given our time constraints, there's a world in which everyone is cheering on the innovators, except move fast and break things, and you end up breaking things. So help us understand, and this will be a team effort, feel free not to agree, but Zoe, let me quote you back. I like big risks.
Yeah.
I like taking big risks. I like high risk and high reward. Where does responsibility come into this? What risks are tolerable? How to create a culture of experimentation and do so responsibly?
So a lot of that comes down to, in my opinion, because I was a founder who built a company and I wanted to push the bounds of innovating, and we've seen people who have gone too far. Some of them are in jail now in the healthcare space, very famously, who did not have a good advisory board, did not have a good investor board of directors. So there's a control element within these companies. If the founder has too much control and there's not a good checks and balances in place and they don't have a good clinical advisory board or an expertise in their realm of what it is that they're innovating in, I think that there is inherent risk that they can go too far, too fast.
And everybody, and who wants to come in? Zoe, I'll let you carry on.
But on the flip side, you have regulation, which is a great hindrance in many times to innovation at all. So when I was building that company, ZappRX, the number of doctors or nurses who sat in the room and said, I don't know if I can use a cloud-based software because of HIPAA. And HIPAA was one of these great regulations that was supposed to do something important, which was protect your data.
Yes.
But the reality was, when you needed it shared, all these barriers were in place to prevent it from being shared.
And everybody, all I would say, Zoe, thank you.
Yeah.
All I would say is that there's nefarious behavior, obviously, and then there's unintended consequences.
But there's bad on both.
And who will speak to the latter?
You know, one example, I in reflection, you look at companies that embraced technology and companies that didn't quite the same way. Let's look at Microsoft and let's look at Intel, right? And so I kind of think that it's a matter of really, really, truly embracing the future and technology. I think that we have many examples where companies have disappeared because they were not ready for what was to come.
So Ben, I've got to get your take on this, because you are harnessing some of the most powerful technological forces we've ever known, and with that comes responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I think some of these systems are really great at also being part of the compliance infrastructure, right? So you have AIs maybe on the offense side, but you also can deploy these systems on the defense side. And so from a quality or risk management perspective, imagine, let's just take, a simple example, finance teams, knowing what's fraudulent or not fraudulent. These are things that a human, auditor would have a really hard time, and an AI system can really kind of capture these kind of things. So I think, risks are really important, but these systems themselves have huge potentials on that end as well.
And very briefly, Rahul, your take on this, because you've got hundreds of people, they're thoughtful, they are, but at the same time, no risk, no reward.
Yeah, I completely agree that if you don't embrace this, you'll disappear. This is my view. In terms of how to control the risk, I agree with some of the comments that are made about advisories and all that, but I think it's also the data that you're going to use to create your AI on top of the basic models, the foundational models that you have. Those data have to be curated by humans. So if you don't have the right people that are going to teach, if you have a child who's going to read the entire internet, they will learn about all kinds of stuff that you don't want. So what do you teach that AI?
Let's just say, Zoe, let's say I binned all of your non-competes and said, go back at it. Welcome back to health. Where would you run?
Honestly, I would probably build a very similar company because the specialty drug sector is 2% of drug volume, 400% of drug spend, and we innovated within one category, which was pulmonary, and we didn't touch all the other categories. That grouping of drugs, specialty drugs, it takes 2 to 3 months on average to get access to a drug, and we only solved it for one specific vertical and pulmonary.
Right.
There's so much more dollars, there's so many more patients that I think could benefit from getting a drug in 48 hours, and there's a big opportunity there.
Right. So what I'd say to all four of you is thank you for what you're doing. We will read about you through the headlines or in person at FII. We're very grateful to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Irene, Rahul, and Ben. Thank you, everybody. We will make our way from the stage. Thank you for having us.